We have a very special guest joining us today on the WBGO Journal, noted Broadway performer, singer, actor, director, dancer, and author, Ronald Smokey Stevens. His one-man show, I Just Want to Tell Somebody, just received the 50th annual Vivian Robinson Adelko Recognition Award for Best Solo Performance. And it's a powerful show, and it's the story of his life. Smokey Stevens, great to see you.
Doug, it's great to see you. It's great to be here. I'm a big fan. I love WBGO and I love the stories, man, that you do. And so it is indeed a pleasure to be sitting here with you.
So, Smokey, you've been listening to WBGO and you heard the art of the story, and you said, I'd like to tell my story on the art of the story. And you have an amazing story to tell. You started
Well, thank you.
basically performing, Smokey, at your mom's card parties. Take us back to when you were a little kid in DC.
Okay. Yeah, my mom and her friends, they used to recreate by getting together every weekend or so to play cards, pity pat and tunk. And they would be gambling and what have you. And my mom, every time you visit my mom's house, she would always prepare food for them to buy, fried chicken sandwiches and chicken dinners and what have you. And the people would always bring their own brown bags, so to speak, right? And so, in the middle of the course of the night, after being full on my mom's delicious chicken and having a few drinks, they would always ask me and my sister to come out and dance for them. And so, my sister and I, and growing up in D.C., they were called D.C. hand dancing. Right? It's also in Baltimore, hand dancing. It's also in Chicago. But anyway, my mom would come back and say, come on, come on. They want y'all to dance for us. And so they would put on Papa's Got a Brand New Bag by James Brown. And my sister and I, we would come out, man, and we would hand dance for the people, my mom's guests. And they always got a big kick out of seeing my sister and I hand dancing. I would be twirling my sister around and spinning and what have you. So yeah, that was one of my earliest recollections of performing in front of people, being performing hand dance for my mom's card playing buddies.
Did you know at that time that you had the skills that eventually, in the movie The Wiz, you would be one of the crows dancing with Michael Jackson as he was the scarecrow in The Wiz?
Wow. Doug, at that particular time, I had no idea that my career would blossom and that theater and dance would take me to such heights and give me the opportunities to work with people like Michael Jackson in The Wiz as one of the crows. As a young dancer, hand dancing in DC, no, I cannot say that I saw that coming. But I always loved to dance, man. And I started training. I was accepted as one of the members of the DC Black Repertory Company in Washington, D.C. In the early 70s. And at that time, they had not only the DC Rep Acting Company, but they had the DC Rep Dance Company as well. And so my girlfriend at the time, she was one of the dancers with the DC Rep Dance Company, and I'm an actor with the acting company. So I started driving my girlfriend at the time to her ballet classes, and subsequently, they would have, since they saw me every day, I just said, "Hey, could I stand in the corner? Could I try learning some of the stuff that you guys are doing?" And they allowed me to stand in the corner and learn, and eventually I became very good. And eventually I acquired the technique of ballet, which has taken me throughout my entire professional career.
It's an amazing story, Smokey Stevens. I want to just give people a sense of not only someone like Michael Jackson, but Cab Calloway. Talk about working with Cab Calloway.
Now, I got to tell you, Doug, that was one of the most exciting experiences in my life because I knew about Cab Calloway and him singing Minnie the Moocher and all the songs that he made famous. And Cab Calloway, he was the Michael Jackson of the 20s and the 30s. Because Cab Calloway, he mesmerized audiences. Not only was he a band leader, but he would turn around with that orchestra stick in his hand and that long hair, and Cab Calloway would dance, and he would mesmerize audiences. So I always loved that about Cab Calloway. And he was cast. My first Broadway show was Bubbling Brown Sugar, which paid a tribute to the Harlem Renaissance, the music, the comedy, the songs, and what have you. And Cab Calloway contributed significantly to the Harlem Renaissance with his music. And here he was, as a matter of fact, in Bubbling Brown Sugar, they did one of his songs called Jim Jam Jumpin' Jive. And I had the opportunity to dance on stage in that number, you know. And when he was hired in Bubbling Brown Sugar. So we were actually seeing the man that made the music that was a star that was just so awesome, man. And it was just such a blessing having an opportunity to meet and work with my living history. Yeah, Mr. Cab Calloway, he was something else, boy, I tell you.
What did you say to him?
Well, the first thing I said to him when he allowed me to talk to him, because he was kind of shrewd, but the first thing I said to him once the waters were smooth, I said, "Hey, Cab, did you really know this cat named Smokey that was kind of blokey that took Minnie down to Chinatown and showed her how to kick the gong around?" Because that's the second verse in his song, Minnie the Moocher, howdy, 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 ho, right? I said, "Did you really know this cat named Smokey?" Then he turned around and looked at me and he said, "Yeah, I do, Smokey. And if you keep on messing with me, I'll get Smokey to come and tear your behind up." That's what he said to me. But afterwards, man, we became real close, real tight. And he liked my style. You know what I mean? Because I was one of the young dancers in the show. And I like to think that I had the panache and I had the style, but I also emulated his style because Cab was known to be in the tuxedo with the long tails, and he had always had the gold chain, and the gold chain where he would swing the gold chain when he would move around on stage. So when I had the opportunity in the number called Dancing at the Savoy, I was like the narrator of the show. And I had an opportunity to narrate the show, but when I got down to the bottom on the stage level, I did a split and I came up and I started swinging my chain like Calloway walking across the stage, man. And yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I've had many talks with Savion Glover from Newark, the tap dancer extraordinaire. Did you ever get a chance to meet Savion?
No, Savion was like he was a kid. You know, I'm a
Yeah,
couple of generations older
yeah.
than him, but I did see him in the Broadway production, bringing the noise, bringing the funk.
Hmm.
I mean, and he was nurtured and mentored by Gregory Hines and all of those older tap dancers, man. And you know, he became a wonder. You know, I remember he had a tap when his Broadway show was up, bringing the noise, bringing the funk. He had a tap workshop downtown in one of the studios, and I said, "Shoot, I'm going down here to do this workshop with Savion Glover." But man, his tapping was so advanced, and he was just like, you know, you have the intermediate, beginners, and the advanced. Savion Glover was super advanced. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
yeah. But I did have the opportunity to work and become friends with the legendary Charles Honey Coles. And
Mm.
Charles Honey Coles was my instructor. He was my mentor, and he also was in Bubbling Brown Sugar. And I remember once we had well, he asked me once, he said, because he was having trouble with the new choreography that was being taught by Billy Wilson, the choreographer. And Honey Coles came up to me like one day out of the clear blue sky. He said, "Smokey, can you show me how to do that turn?" And I said, "Sure." And so we went back downstairs and I showed him how to do that turn, man. And from that day on, Cap, Honey Coles and I, we became great friends. And he educated me to what it was like to be a black man in show business. He always said you must always be on time. You always got to keep your shoes shine, and you got to always keep a smile on your face because you never can tell who's gonna see you on stage.
You had to be excellent in
Uh,
order to talk about how difficult was it to be a black performer at that time.
well, as Honey Coles told me, due to segregation, you had to be not only good, but you had to be immaculate. And so dressing up and being sharp went along with just being on stage because, again, most blacks did not have the opportunity to perform on the major vaudeville stages of the time, and very few ever got to Ed Sullivan's show. But there was a circuit where black entertainers performed on. And when you had that opportunity to perform, as he said, you always had to be clean and you always had to keep your shoes shine because you were representing the black community at that time. You didn't take show business for granted because show business was being like you're like at the cream of the crop. You were at the echelon of arts and entertainment, and you had to represent your community, by being not only excellent in your craft, but being also immaculately dressed and clean at all times. Yeah.
Besides your recent performance, and I just want to tell somebody your story, what are you most proud of in this long career that you've had?
Wow, Doug. That well, I'm most proud of the fact that I had an opportunity to perform on the Broadway stages of New York City and the world. I'm most proud of the fact that I was fortunate to perform in 5 Broadway shows. And in that time, I got a chance to meet my entertainment legends of the industry, Avon Long, as I said, Mr. Charles Honey Coles. I got a chance to meet I even had a chance to meet Sippy Wallace when she was alive. I just met so many of the legends, Josephine Pramise, and so many people, and I was just my eyes were like opened, to show business not only as a performer but to the history and our legacy as performers by working with those individuals. But then also, Doug, I'm also most proud of the fact that I was able to create or co-create a Broadway show of my own. And I'm really most proud of that. The late Ashton Springer, the producer of Bubbling Brown Sugar, he went on to produce Sophisticated Ladies. He went on to produce Yubi. But in 1999, Ashton Springer actually brought my show to New York City, and I had an opportunity to not only co-create, but direct, choreograph, and star in my own Broadway show. And I kind of say, man, that was like, it doesn't occur in the lifetime of too many performers. I have to say that because Broadway is a very competitive market and it has certain criteria, but through Ashton and his perseverance and his love of my show, which paid a tribute to the Black Vaudeville circuit of the 1920s. My show was called Rolling on the TOBA, a tribute to the last days of Black Vaudeville. So I am most proud of that opportunity. But Doug, I've had a lot of wonderful, proud moments. You mentioned my show, and this was a solo show, and it was entitled I Just Want to Tell Somebody. And Doug, I created that show as a one-man show because in my lifetime, I rose to the apex of the entertainment industry, but unfortunately, I fell. You know what I mean? And I fell. And actually, when my Broadway show closed, I was so devastated and so distraught because I thought that I was going to become a star after creating your own Broadway show, directly choreographing and starring in it. But the politics of Broadway, the politics of show business, it forced our show to close prematurely, even though we got wonderful reviews from the New York Times. But when it closed, it kind of crushed my spirit. because I contributed so much of myself into making that show happen. Wow, my own show on Broadway, I gave it all. And when it closed, man, I was like crushed and depleted, and I failed, dog. And it took me some years to pull myself back together and to regain an appreciation for theater, because theater then broke my heart. But what I did was I turned that tragedy into triumph, because see, I wrote about my rise, I wrote about my fall, and I wrote about my comeback. And
Yeah.
that's what my story I just want to tell somebody is about. My comeback after overcoming and being able to rise again. And fortunately, I was able to win that award, the Vivian Robinson 50th anniversary Adelco Award for Best Solo Show in New York City. So I've had a lot of proud moments, man. And I sit here today on my birthday very grateful for them all.
And happy birthday. Very much so. And
Thank
you, as I mentioned,
thank
the story that you tell is your story. And you talk about fall, and that had to do with drug addiction. How did, you know, drug addiction is something that is, you talk to anybody, it's one of the most difficult things to overcome. How were you able to pick yourself up after even spending some time in jail and turning your life
Yeah.
back around to the success that you're enjoying now?
Well, Doug, as I said, theater broke my heart. When my show closed, man, and at a very early age during the 60s and the late 60s, during the hippie era and the peace and love movement, I made a wrong turn. And I started recreating with drugs and alcohol. And then that recreating, turned into constant usage. And then that recreation turned into not just recreation, but turned into bondage. And then over a period of time, it blew into full addiction. And that usage followed me most of my entertainment career, because it was like an alternate ego part of myself. It was something that I was doing. It never affected my work, but it affected my social life tremendously. And so after the fall, I had stopped using drugs when I was cast in the Cotton Club film starring Richard Gere and Gregory Hines. Me and the actress Jackée Harry, she and I portrayed the role of Butterbeans and Susie, which was a vaudeville comedy team back in the day. But I had quit, and my career was on the rise, on the rise. My show was even featured on Broadway. But when they snatched my opportunity to become a star away, it was easy. I relapsed. And I started using again. And a year after I was on Broadway, a year after my Broadway show closed, I was sitting in a prison cell. And Doug, I saw myself at the bottom of life. I saw myself virtually in hell on earth. And Doug, I just cried out to God, man. I said, please just give me one more chance, God. I just really believed if he is what he says he is, the forgiving, compassionate, loving God. I said, I have made mistakes. I have learned. I have fallen. But if you give me just one more chance, God. And when I made that choice, something happened. And what actually happened, Doug, was I went to the pastor of the chaplain of that penitentiary in Ohio. And I told that chaplain who I was and the shows and stuff, the Broadway stuff that I had done. And I had rewritten a contemporary version of the biblical story of the prodigal son. And I went to the chaplain of that penitentiary and I said, Sir, I have a play. Would you allow me to direct this play in prison? And the chaplain agreed. And I had the opportunity to work with 22 felons, the worst of society, the people who've been cast away. These inmates, some of them were lifers who would never ever get out of jail. and others were there for various reasons. But I had a chance to direct them in my play in prison in the story of the prodigal son. And when that happened, it was like a sign from God. And with that motivation, I chose to live, continue to damage myself, my body, my reputation, and my career in using drugs. I made the choice, Doug. Because see, there's power in choosing. We make choices every day. Everything we do, we make choices. But I chose to live. And God gave me another opportunity. And so I turned that whole addiction story that was part of my life into a two-character play. And that play was called I Just Want to Tell Somebody.
And D-Man, Smokey,
Uh,
was your demon, the other character in the show.
D-Man was my demon in life, and D-Man was the other character in my show. And I played myself and D-Man. And as I was able to overcome in life, I overcame by defeating D-Man on stage.
Mm.
And it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. I felt like, wow, I've been the full circle. You know, I turned that tragedy into triumph. And the reviews that I got, man, you couldn't buy or pay for. And I was also awarded the 50th anniversary Adelco Award for Best Solo Show in New York City. I believe for any people who are struggling, who may be listening to this, you, as long as you have life, you have choices. And with those choices, you have the power, that's innate power to choose. You could choose life or you could choose death. And I chose life.
It's a powerful story that you were amazing in. So congratulations on that. I have to ask you, Smokey, are dancers born or do you learn how to dance? Is it inside you? Because I, I have this tendency to believe that dancers were born as a dancer.
Well, Doug, you are right. Dancers are born. There are people who were created to dance. You know, I mean, we could talk about Baryshnikov, a ballet master from Russia. We could talk about Gregory Hines, who of Hines and Dad. He and his brother, they were born to dance. We could talk about Sammy Davis Jr. Most people didn't know that Sammy Davis Jr. came up in the Will Master Trio with his father and uncle, and he was a young prodigy. And Sammy Davis Jr. was probably the most incredible dancer that you've ever seen in your life. And then there's Gregory Hines. And then, so I would say that even in my case, but I had to study. See, some people you're trained. No, let me say this. It's innately there. And then people who love it, they hone it, they develop it, they study it, and they master it. You understand what I'm saying? And
Sure.
so I had the innate ability to be able to dance. And so I studied ballet for 6 years before I ever danced anywhere in New York City. But when I finished after 6 years, I was a fine-tuned instrument, and Smokey could dance.
Yeah.
So
I'm
yeah,
so glad that I'm getting the opportunity to talk to you because uh, one of my dearest friends through the years that I've been at WBGO became Judith Jamison, who was
uh-huh.
the artistic director of the Albanese American Dance Theater, and of course,
Yeah,
the wonderful ballerina and dancer, one of the best ever. And
yeah.
somehow we connected. I'm a terrible dancer, Smokey, right? And she's one of the best ever. But I appreciated her passion, her humanity. I appreciated her so much that I always look forward to bringing her into the station and talking about the upcoming performances of the Albanese American Dance Theater. That theater company was the company that turned me into a dance fan, right? And
Yeah,
and appreciate dance. So when you talk about performing with the likes of Cab Calloway and the likes of Michael Jackson, we see the level that you have achieved throughout your career. And the beautiful thing is there was a big hurdle thrown in your way, but you overcame it. And now you're being able to tell the story of not only the wonderful time that you've had on Broadway, but even more importantly, how you were able to defeat D, the D man, and
yeah,
to go on now and to enjoy life.
yeah,
Do you have a
yeah.
desire to do another show?
Yes, I do, Doug. As a matter of fact, I have written a jazz musical, and this jazz musical is entitled A Night in Tunisia. And we will be doing a stage reading and a stage presentation of this jazz musical, A Night in Tunisia, this fall at Theater for the New City, the same place where I was fortunate enough to do my one man show. Yeah.
Tell us about your love of jazz.
Well, okay. My love of jazz began when because I I love male vocalists. Let me start there. Johnny Hartman, Eddie Jefferson, Joe Williams. I just love male vocalists. Lou Rawls, right? So when I heard Eddie Jefferson, it was told to me that his lyrics were songs that were jazz instrumental solos. So in other words, he would took Miles Davis, ba-da-da-dee-da, ba-dee-da, ba-da. And so what? And he put lyrics to it. Miles Davis walked off the stage, so what? And man, I was introduced to jazz by listening to Eddie Jefferson sing their jazz solos. And what he did became known as the art of jazz vocalese singing. And man, I was hooked. And so after hearing one song, he covered, Dexter Gordon, he covered Coleman Hawkins, he covered James Moody. And so I began to grow and appreciate jazz music by hearing Eddie Jefferson sing their jazz solos. And so, man, I had to write a play because I didn't think the world, the on a broader scope, really knew about his contribution of being able to write lyrics and tell stories or jazz musicians' instrumental solos was brilliant. And so I wrote a play in dedication and a tribute to Eddie Jefferson and his vocally style of singing and to jazz. And it's
No,
called A Night in Tunisia.
and Night in Tunisia, a song by Bud
Yeah.
Powell, Dizzy Gillespie featuring Charlie Parker. Do you remember the first time you heard Night in Tunisia?
Yes, I do. And it was actually hearing Eddie Jefferson singing, dog. You know what I mean? Really, it was actually hearing Eddie Jefferson singing. And since then, I've heard all of the musical versions, you know what I mean? And I've grown to appreciate, the original composer, of the song and all of the variations. But I'm a story kind of guy, you know what I mean? Like with country music is like they're telling you stories. Where Eddie Jefferson told you jazz stories. But Doug, I'm privileged and fortunate to have written another book that I kind of think most artists and most people who have an appreciation for history, particularly entertainment history, would really love. And this book is available at the Drama Bookshop here in New York City, and it's also available at BarnesandNoble.com. And this book, after being in those shows and meeting my living history on stage, is called The First 60 Years, The History of Afro American Musical Theater and entertainment, 1865 to 1930.
Mm.
And Doug, that's another thing that I'm really, really proud of because in my research and able to order to write this book, I just discovered so much about us as a people and our contributions to entertainment here in America. And that book chronicles from 1865 up to 1930 before the Great Depression. But it also introduces the audiences to the first Black American entrepreneurs in American history. And the first Black American entrepreneurs were people in show business. And before there was sports in America, there was Black entertainment, musical theater. Before there was a record industry in America, there was Black musical theater. And entrepreneurs, the first Black American entrepreneurs came out of arts, entertainment, and Black musical theater. So I had to just share that information about all of the great Black entrepreneurs. You know, people think that Madam C.J. Walker, with her hair and what she did, which was phenomenal during that period, but the things that Ma Rainey and Paul Rainey were able to do, beginning in 1875, the things that the Whitman sisters did, beginning in 1890, and also the Black Patty, Cynthia Retta Jones and her troubadours. It was called the Black Patty and her troubadours. Like Oprah today, who's contributed so much to art and culture, she's the entrepreneur. These were the first three Black American entrepreneurs in American history.
Ronald Smokey Stevens, so great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us and continued success.
And Doug, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share parts and aspects of my life as well as my book. And I do want to encourage your audiences, if you have an appreciation for Black entertainment history, contact the Drama Bookstore. The book is entitled The First 60 Years, The History of Afro-American Musical Theater and Entertainment. And Doug, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.